So the reason I wanted to do this event, was I had this conversation with Angela Davis a few months ago now, and she was like, this movie, Since I've Been Down, was this transformative experience. Y'all have to see it. I was like, what is this? And then Gilda Sheppard slid up into my email and was like, it's me. I got it. I got it for you. Like, this is what you need. And sent the film over. I watched it and it blew my mind open, blew my heart open. As an abolitionist, as an emergent strategist, as someone who deeply believes we need to end this prison system and deeply believes in the humanity of everyone who gets caught up in this system and deeply believes that all of us have the capacity to transform in our lifetimes, and that no one else can determine that for us. I was moved by this, and I wanted everyone to experience this. I wanted everyone to be able to see this film. And so that's part of why I was like, well, let me do an event, because then the people who see me will see this event. They'll see that this movie exists. And I want to interview y'all, right? Just straight up ask you questions. And then we're recording this so that we can share this, we can post this on YouTube, and other people, until the film comes out, can go ahead and get a taste of how incredible this work is. Yeah. So first, how are you doing? How are each of you?
Good.
How are you doing
Good.
today? Yes, good.
Thank you so
Tonya,
much,
how you doing?
Adrienne.
Oh, thank you.
I'm doing well. Just glad to be here.
Kimonti, how are you? Oh, no, keep going, Tonya.
No, go ahead. It's
We're
cool.
going to find our rhythm in this too.
I know we will.
Right. I'm blessed. You know, the day is good. The energy is great. Glad that everything was able to make this event come to life tonight. Today. So, man, I couldn't ask for a better opportunity right now. So, thank y'all for having me.
Beautiful. Thank you. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, for people who haven't seen this film yet, which is the majority of folks still, can each of you share your journey to being a part of this project, right? Like, why were you a subject? Why do you feel like your story is part of what needs to be told? And Kimonti, maybe you can start us off and we can go from there. And then Tonya, and then Gilda, you can tell us sort of how you came to do this.
Right. First and foremost, my name is Kimonti Carter. I'm currently incarcerated here in Washington State, at Stafford Creek Correctional Center. And I'm, officially have, 25 years in on, a life without possibility of parole sentence. And I would just say, growing up in the prison system, growing up, really just finding my bearings as a young Black man, really being able to, just take responsibility for the direction in which my life, had ultimately took, but also realizing that I possess so much, more potential, that my being, my vessel, possess so much more, capacity to not only change my trajectory, but also to contribute, in the trajectory of other people's lives that I've seen that was kind of veering off track. And so as I kind of, moved in, in the spirit of, curiously wandering, right? Because I definitely didn't see that there was a destination that I was trying to get to, but I just know that there was just places that I was trying to get away from. And so as I continued to just move in the spirit, man, I was able to really, come in contact with a lot of, wonderful people who was able to really, speak truth and breathe energy into my life, that encouraged me to continue on my path, and as I continue to, look inside myself, as I continue to explore and seek knowledge and pursue, education and everything that I could possibly get my hands on, man, it literally, helped me blaze, this path towards, contributing to the Black Prisoners Caucus, participating in liberation education spaces, and, ultimately, creating a vehicle that I felt was just, desperately needed for, a lot of men who were, really denied the opportunity of being able to pursue their own greatness, and so this is where Teach comes from. And, being able to just really move in those organic ways inside a classroom really just, I think, was able to make all of these other pieces come together, like with meeting Tonya, connecting with Gilda, and ultimately this is really Gilda's vision, right? Because
you have 60 seconds remaining.
I could definitely say this wasn't something that I really pictured, but Gilda was able to really come inside the circle of life that we was sitting in, and she introduced this idea to us, man, and we felt that we trusted and believed in her energy and her spirit, and this is what ultimately was created.
And Kimonti, you're gonna call us back?
Yes. You're back on. Let's finish your thought.
All right. Well, I think that was pretty much it.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of what brought me to where I'm at today.
Beautiful. And I'll have more questions, so we'll come back around. I have more for each of you, but Tonya, can you give us that sort of entry for you? Like, how did you end up where you are now in this journey?
This journey has many divergent paths, I guess, and I ended up on this journey because I was curious, and because Gilda was curious. She doesn't just want to know people; she wants to know the paths that, just like you do, as an artist, as an author, as a human that knows that we are, like, our destinies are in each other's hands. She wants to know where we're going by knowing where I'm going, where I came from, and all of her students. And so I was her student before I was incarcerated, and we lost touch because of that, because of the life that I was living like during the whole time I was in school, before school, after school. And the next time I saw her, from the age 19, I was probably about 32 or 33. And she had come into the prison as a keynote speaker. And so we were both very surprised to see each other in that space. And she was curious. She wanted to know not why I was there, but how I was there. Yeah. And then why all the circumstances surrounding that journey. And she began to record her classrooms. She put us in conversation with her students at the men's facility, and she documented it. And then her curiosity led us to record and make a historical record of what she was seeing.
Yeah.
And it just developed from there. I didn't participate in this because I wanted to be a part of a documentary, but I wanted to understand myself some of the questions that she was asking. Yeah. And, because there are questions that you don't sometimes ask yourself in your trauma, and especially in your captivity. Yeah. And one of the questions that she always asks us is, do you think prisons work? Do they work to transform people? Do they work to rehabilitate people? And then the conversations that come from that are a path onto another portion of the journey. And so that question, her showing up into that prison and asking those questions, was why I'm here today.
Beautiful.
I am so honored to be here.
I'm so grateful you are. And I have more questions for you too, so I'm going to come back to that. But Gilda, I wanted to bring you in, weave you in. What you have created is such a piece of political education and a piece of art without sacrificing either thing. It's truly incredible. And so I just wanted to ask you, how did this film come through you?
I had been teaching and just finished filming a ethnographic documentary in Ghana, West Africa, in a refugee camp, Liberian women and children refugees, and made a lot of mistakes there, right? And the women there were very patient with me. When you talk about people impacted, they need to be in leadership. I learned that, so much. So this journey was riddled with contradictions, but also with learning, because then I realized how to use my privilege in a responsible way. Well, the woman in the refugee camp said, Sis Gilda, the same AK-47s that you see in the hands of children in the Civil War in Liberia are on your children's hands, and you need to do something about that. And so I said, let me be impacted as top. Let me use my privilege in a responsible way. And I started seeing things. James Baldwin says the role of an artist is the role of a lover. If I love you, I have to show you things you refuse to see. And so I was not seeing things that I needed to see, that where our school is, Evergreen State College in Tacoma, is right in the hilltop area where my film takes place. And gentrification was coming in, which means policing was there. But there's a history of that, right? And then I realized that some of my students had ankle bracelets around their ankles, and so I'm like, what is going on? Why wasn't I seeing this? I'm teaching sociology, and actually all these theories was because people were looking at them, right?
Yeah.
And so one thing led to another, and I started teaching in the prisons, and it took me 12 years to finish this film. He really did it. But I went from Professor Sheppard to Auntie Gilda to Mama G, and with intimacy in there, right? And they trusted me. I would bring up sociological theories like sociology and imagination, and what came out of it was these phenomenal references, not only to their lives, but other scholars. And I thought, where are you getting this? And they said the Black Prisoners Caucus.
Yes.
And it's a 40-year organization that saves lives. Then I went over to the women's prison because, there's a margin on margin, and that's the women's prison. And that's where I saw Tonya again. And Tonya started an organization. These are prisoner-created organizations, the Black Prisoners Caucus. Tonya and her colleagues started an organization called the Women's Village. And the women's prison was the most violent in Washington State. When she and her colleagues started that, the violence went down by 50%.
Yeah.
It's one thing, as Kimonti Carter says, studying the subject. It's another thing, being the subject.
Yes.
And so I was learning so much about these sociological theories. And so I said, I posed the question, does prison work? And they started talking about the prison on the outside. And I realized is that these 80s and 90s of racist policies, 3 strikes you're out, hard time for armed crime. And if you shoot from a car, you can get life without parole. But if you stepped out of the car, you can get 20 years. Who shoots from a car? Who do they look like? I'm not saying shooting, but that's how the legal system works, right? And so I started to see more of the white supremacists, as Bell Hooks says, white supremacist capitalist patriarchy.
Yes.
And so, but then this film is no slow fade in the gore. No. It is, even in spite of these racist policies that just made fear and cleaning up the neighborhood, which means that these kids who had non-negotiable pathways to joining gangs as early as 11 years old, girls and boys, right, were going to prison, cleaning them up for gentrification. But it's also and then the students did some systemic research. They realized that the disenfranchisement of themselves in education and healthcare and in jobs, the first thing that happens. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Their fathers coming home from Vietnam, with post-traumatic stress, no public health facility, nothing to help them at all. So this is what happens. And that's the reason why when I saw Kimonti Carter go across to the white nationalist gangs, he was a blood, go to the Crips, the former Crips, right? Go to the Asian Pacific Islanders and start an education program called Teach. So you get a guy with swastikas teaching with a guy with a teardrop, right? And he's saying, I'm learning more about El Salvador and Mexico. I realize we have the same enemy.
Yes.
These organic scholars are
Yes.
activists. They are the earth seed. It is the most
Yes.
amazing thing I've ever seen. So you get to see in this film, since I've been down, you get to see the triumph of the human spirit, but also what we do to children.
That's right.
It's,
Oh,
it's
it's one thing to work on these issues, and it's another thing to actually get to be in conversation with folks who are like, we're living, these are the experiments we're in. This is the stories we're telling. And I want to come back to you, Kimonti, because when I was watching the film, I cried multiple times during the film. I was moved to tears, moved to like, that's the transformation that we talk about, and each of you embodies it. I wanted to ask you to tell a little bit about the transformation, the first round, because it feels like what you're having to do is transform yourself in spite of the conditions, right? It's like these conditions are unjust, unfair, dehumanizing, and yet against those conditions, you are finding a way to humanize yourself, rehumanize yourself, reclaim yourself. And so I wanted to ask the sort of what happened first? Like, what was that first thing? Because we see you still so young saying, I want to apologize to this family, right? What was it that actually made that first step possible of that apology? And then we see you later being like, I'm inviting these other people to reclaim their humanity, people from different backgrounds, people who have committed different crimes, people who've done all these things. What for you allowed that transformation to happen in those cases?
All right, there's a lot going on there. So I think that the very first thing, I think to really get me to the point to, just, becoming a man, I'll say that maturation process. It really was about just spending a lot of time with myself. I'm saying, locked in a cell. I'm saying, hours and hours on end, and getting to the point to where I was just tired of lying to myself, right? Because you can wander around the prison yards, and the day room and the gym, and you'll see tons of people, right, who are living this and walking in this fantasy, right? There's tons of excuses. There's tons of reasons. They are directing the blame elsewhere, and I don't think that it was really benefiting anybody's growth, right? Because the more we lie to ourselves, the further away we get from the truth, right? Because some people get to the point where they actually start believing the lie. And, for me, it was like I really had to come to grips with, just the damage that I caused, right? I had to own that, and I was, even being in that process, I was also realizing that me owning this was also owning this life sentence, right? Admitting this was me basically saying is that I also accept my reality. And then I think I just arrived at a place to where I also realized that I have to accept the truth for what it is. And for me, I think that was it, right? It was just being able to basically say that I'm grown enough to be able to accept, the decisions that I've made, even how terrible they are. I'm man enough to be able to own them. And I think that for me being able to do that, it really allowed myself to not be so, burdened down with just the idea that I was actually stuck in prison. I also realized that I still have a life to live. There's still going to be tomorrow. There's still going to be next week. There's still going to be my 23rd and 24th and 25th birthday at the time, right? And I still realized that those times was going to come. So what was I going to be working towards as these years begin to approach me? And again, right, not having a lot of life experience, I was using my environment as a way of being able to provide those gauges of where I did not want to end up, right? So now I'm seeing men who are 5 years older than me, 10 years older than me, 20 years older than me, right? As markers of accomplishment, as markers of maturity, as markers of leadership, right? And now, and there were certain people who lacked a lot of these qualities, and there were certain people who had ingredients of things that I felt to be admirable, right? And so, I think that as we get to talking about like that this mimicry that we do as humans, right? We are people through people, and so I'm learning to leave a lot and take a little, right? As I begin to explore, philosophies and classes and writers and all of these different types of things. And then I just got into the process, especially within the Black Christians Caucus, of being able to just, figure out how I can contribute, right? How can I use my example, my story, my testimony, as a way of being able to show people, what's really going on out there. Because a lot of times when you hear older people, whether they're politicians, whether they're our elders, or just people who just have no clue about what's going on in the streets or what's wrong with our youth, they're so far off point.
Yeah.
Right? So far from the truth. But and the reason they are is because they're making all of these decisions, and these assumptions without the youth in the room. Ain't no youth contributing to the conversations.
Right.
And if they are, some of them aren't able to articulate their suffering, right? Or they're just unable to contribute to a conversation that they realize that they're not going to be listened to anyway. So I think that right there was really a part of my process, is I had to own it. And I think that as I begin to own the things that I've done, it also began to open up the possibilities of the person that I wanted to become. And I knew that I wanted to grow. I knew that I wanted to become better. And I just really accepted every challenge.
Yeah, so much of what you're saying, like when I listen to you, I'm like, yeah, that's the bodhisattva. That's the journey of the Buddhists, have this concept of the bodhisattva, like where you're really practicing being with what is. And it's only from being with what is that you can really transcend, right? And I hear that in your story. It's like turning and facing what is. But, you're like, I had to be a man. I had to take responsibility for what I did. And I'm like, and you weren't a man when, you were a child in the shaping of those decisions. You were a child, as far as I can see, as far as I understand age, when it happened. And I wonder if you were designing the world, redesigning Hilltop, what are some structures? What are some changes you would put in for other children like the child that you were in that time that led up to what happened?
What would be some structures that I would implement for those youth?
Yeah, structures for the youth, classes, what decisions do you think? What do they need? Right.
And that's I get you. Right. And that's a beautiful question, right? Because I think that what I wouldn't be able to do is be able to articulate what the youth of today need. Right. Only they can do that.
Right.
But I think that what I understand of myself and as I understand of them is I would create a space in order for them to be able to create these opportunities for themselves. Right.
Yep.
Because sometimes we just need to be, right? Sometimes we just need to be able to support. Sometimes we just need to be able to encourage. Sometimes we just need to be able to ignite the imagination in order for the things that is necessary in order for them to be. And that's what I would do. I think that many of these kids, they're as educators, as community leaders, as elders, we don't listen to the kids. We just tell kids what to do.
That's
right. But in the streets, kids listen to each other. Right? They entertain each other's thoughts, their imaginations, their desires, and then they figure out ways of being able to accomplish those things, whether illegal or legal. Right? Whether through arts, whether through sports, whether through all of these avenues that are available for them. I think that I would just simply, just create spaces in order for you to be able to come, in order for them to be able to realize, man, is that, we are only limited by our own imagination. We need to realize that Superman is...
You have 60 seconds remaining.
And the opportunities that we need for this community needs to be created by y'all. So where do we start? Right? I think that the more that we create those times and those spaces for these young folks, and we as the elders and the people who are connected to resources, we just need to be able to create the resources as a way of being able to help them, you know what I'm saying, be supported in their ideas and their drives. And I promise you, you know what I'm saying, that many of the ills that they suffer from will be addressed.
That's right. Thank you so much for that. I feel like that core practice of beginning by listening, that piece around listening is so crucial, that we're structuring people into systems where there's no possibility for survival, and then being surprised that they don't survive that. And there's something about how do we listen to what people are actually experiencing and going through. And Tonya, I want to come to you now, because one of the next places where I was weeping in the movie was when you were telling your story about your mom's crack addiction and how that limited the options that you had available to you, right? That it was like she was so fully caught up in what she was going through. By the time it came, your chance to start figuring out what are the paths of life that I want to be
You
on,
have a prepaid call. You will
it
not
was
be
unclear.
charged for this call.
It was unclear for you, like what that many options were. And it just feels like that funneling, right? So first I wanted to ask you, what do you feel like people miss when it comes to understanding addiction and being a child inside of the realm of addiction? And then similar to what I asked Kimonti, what do you wish was in place, right? That would not shame your mother or punish your mother or punish you as a family, right? But really honor what she was struggling with and honor what you were struggling with. What structures do you wish were in place?
As I think about my mom, I've seen so many, so much art, so much poetry, so many books written about people's mothers, and I did not understand it until my mother was not on this plane of existence anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the world is just different. There's a different quality a quality that is lost when the person through whom you came to this earth is not here anymore. That's that part of that conduit with understanding the world and you're walking it is gone. And in the grief, as I processed through it, I realized first that, and in that realization, I looked for her legacy, and it wasn't one of materiality, of course. And at first, I just thought it was just regret and pain and sadness and loss.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that her legacy to me, to her children, was a piece of herself. And I get to be the conduit to her, to the world now. And
Yes.
So many people, no matter the mistakes or the pain or the turmoil that was in her life, that is not what people remember. That is not what people feel when they talk about her.
Yeah.
There is not a person that knew her that didn't understand her struggles and her faults, but in spite of those things, they loved her. She brought a richness to the world that people mourn and that people made meaning out of when you're thinking of generosity of heart and spirit, when you're thinking of a kindred soul and acceptance and love and loyalty. And so for that, I know that's what she left me. And even in her addiction, even in my own addiction struggles, my own missteps, and I don't have any children, I understood that she was also somebody's child who had inherited the trauma of her childhood.
That's right.
And she was a person. She wasn't just Sandy. She was a young girl with hopes and dreams and a heart and romance and wants
Yeah.
and gifts. And I mourn the fact that the world, because of the policies that made crack plentiful and brought it to our neighborhood, that the world did not get I can't even imagine what her impact would have been if they had not dropped that bomb into our communities.
That's right.
And then I realized that my mom is just one Black woman.
Yeah.
And so when I see Black mothers now, I have a special love for Black women who are mothers. I make sure they know that I honor them.
That's
And
right.
it doesn't matter what there's I don't even have to know them personally, but I'm honoring them in whatever way that I can,
That's right.
because the world doesn't often honor Black women. And so, because I didn't know how to honor my own mother while she was alive, I honor her now by honoring other Black mothers. And it's a privilege that I have, and it's a responsibility that I have.
Yeah.
And for children of who have experienced the want and sometimes the neglect
Yeah.
and sometimes the abuse of a parent in addiction, I feel like Kimonti does in terms of creating spaces, but also just creating space. And
Yes.
and in this world of capitalism, you create space by putting yourself between um, the demands of capitalism and a child or a young person or even an adult who cannot meet those demands by themselves.
That's
So
right.
if I am able to provide something that gives you the space to do something else with, but instead of looking for in survival mode a
Yeah.
way to live, then I create space for something else. People have done that for me,
Yes.
have created space for me to have a and that time becomes a kind of golden time. If
Yeah.
I can take that and take this care away from you and this care about survival away, then you have the space to do something else with that energy.
That's right.
And the potential for that is undeniable, and most people use it. And we know that young people are creative. They will make a way for themselves. And so just space
Yeah.
and standing in that gap of resources, and then allowing people to know that they have the responsibility and the privilege to do with their life what they want.
That's right.
And usually a person that who has been worthy, who they somebody that they esteem, giving them that space and saying, okay, you're responsible for this, they will take up that gauntlet and run with it.
That's right.
And
That's right. And they'll
and
be given multiple chances. Like I think of that, like I'm someone who had those resources, that like
yeah,
permission. And so it's like it's not like I didn't struggle with anger. It's not like there wasn't addiction issues in my family. It's not
right,
like there weren't moments where my life veered way left from what I thought was going to happen. But there were those safety nets, those people who were seeing my humanity, to protect me from systems that did not see my humanity. And what I hear in
absolutely,
both of you and Kimonti's story is how many children are being dehumanized by this entire structure, the capitalist structure, the white supremacist structure, this prison structure, and in that dehumanization, then having to fight for the basic
right.
needs, space, being
And
listened to,
and
belonging.
I was talking to Gilda last night on the phone, and some of that dehumanization is about the courtesy of being seen as a human, just
That's
common
right.
courtesy.
That's right.
And we are taught to flinch in almost every situation to be denied that courtesy of humanity.
That's right.
And so, like, it changes you when you get it,
Yeah.
and when you have it back after you've been incarcerated. And
Yeah.
we just I think that it's not even about changing,
Mm-hmm.
it's about giving a person space to heal,
That's
because
right.
we're already brilliant, beautiful, gifted, talented.
All of that.
And but the trauma that sits on it just is it oppresses it. So
Yeah. So this is part of what I want to talk about is both of y'all had the experiences you had, and then you regathered, you reclaimed your humanity in spite of the stories, and then you both became organizers. You both then turned around like, how can I give this back? So I want to ask you both about the organizing you actually did. So for Kimonti, we can come to you first. You know, the Black Prisoners Caucus had existed. You joined in to it, and then you got moved to another location where they didn't have one. And so you created one, and then you created the TEACH program, right? And I think that TEACH is taking education and creating history. Is that right? Yeah. I was like, I love this. This is the bomb ass acronym. I love it. So can you just tell a little bit about that what exactly y'all do with the TEACH program? Like, what is it that you're actually doing, and how does it work as such an incredible multiracial program, right? Because it's something that the Black Prisoners Caucus, you know, as far as I can understand, created. But you do have people in there with swastika tattoos. You have folks who are coming from Mexico. You have folks from El Salvador. You have folks, you know, and that's just who we saw in the film, right? It feels like anyone who walked through the door and was open to learning could be a part of what TEACH is offering. So can you tell how you created that and how you hold that?
All right. And so, you know, so they say necessity is the mother of all creation, right?
Uh-huh.
And so, you know, me being transferred from, you know, Monroe Correctional Complex to Column Bay, which is literally at the end of the world on the West Coast. It's at the very, very tip of the continent, right? And so we're about 4 hours from any inner city, any type of connection to community, any types of things of that nature. So me leaving Monroe, which is essentially 45 minutes outside of Seattle, and the I-5 corridor, and getting transferred up to, you know, Column Bay, I was essentially dropped off into a land that was barren. No opportunities, no resources, a whole bunch of people who didn't believe in that things were possible because they haven't seen it. Right? No one challenged or have yet to challenge, you know, I think some of the policies that are in place and that are still in place currently up to that point, right? And so, you know, for many people who have been doing time in the Washington State Department of Corrections, I don't know how it is in other places across the country, but here for anybody that has 7 years or more are considered low priority for any type of resources, whether it's education, whether it's employment, whether it's job training, any type of things of that nature within the Department of Corrections. And so for, you know, those of us who understand mass incarceration, how it is ultimately destroying Black and brown communities, many of the people who have been sentenced disproportionately, right, are mainly Black and brown men. So the majority of the people who have no access to school, no access to programs, no access to training are all are people of color. And so, you know, coming up to, you know, to Column Bay and really connecting with the brothers who was here, you know what I'm saying? They was thirsty for opportunities. They was trying to get to any other place, any other prison across the country, across the state in order for them to create those opportunities. And I was like, we don't need to leave in order for us to get access. We can create that right here. Right. You know what I'm saying? And so this was that wake up moment that I was trying to have with the brothers, is that we can create and demand everything that we need for ourselves right here. You know, and so our first priority was really getting the BPC started, right? We needed a platform in order for all the brothers to be able to come, you know, and for us to legally, you know what I'm saying, meet with, to mobilize, right, within the confines of the Department of Corrections in order for us to be able to build, to strategize, and to do the things that we needed to do. So BPC was first. So after then, you know, education was the highest priority because we had so many young brothers, you know what I'm saying, who were stuck in the circle, who was unable to get their GEDs, never been to college, different types of things of that nature. And one of the things that's always been empowering for Black men is being able to understand our history, what we come from, what we struggle through, what we've been able to overcome. And so, you know, as we began to start to really prioritize these things, you know what I'm saying, I was able to, you know what I'm saying, create the TEACH model, you know, introduce it to the brothers, let them know that this was really a way for us to be able to give ourselves what they wasn't trying to give us, right? We don't need them to provide us with education. All we need them to do is just to get out of our way. Yes. And so as we created the the teach model, started to get it up and running. Of course, prison is surrounded by a lot of politics. It's very racially segregated on the inside. Yeah. And so, you know, one of the things that I always knew from, you know, just organizing in this space is that, you know, I've learned never to tell others what they need. Right? I was definitely, you know, not going to approach, you know what I'm saying, my Asian brothers, you know what I'm saying, my Spanish speaking brothers, you know what I'm saying, to basically tell them, like, you guys need school. Therefore, we created this for you. Right. I wasn't never going to approach it that way. You know what I'm saying? My approach was always like, you know what I'm saying, you know your community and the things that you guys are dealing with better than anybody. So what are some of the things that you guys need, you know what I'm saying, in order for y'all to be able to encourage and empower, you know what I'm saying, your brothers who are doing time in this environment. And so many of my, you know what I'm saying, my Asian brothers, my Spanish speaking brothers, many of them also had ICE detainers. So some of them couldn't speak English. ESL was something that was, highly requested, but was denied. You know, and so what I was also encouraging them is like, this is an opportunity for you guys to be able to build and create any type of platform that y'all in order to empower, you know what I'm saying, your community. You know what I'm saying? And what we'll do is we'll help get the resources in order for you don't have to worry about books, supplies, none of that stuff. And
Beautiful.
And then all I was asking to do is just to draw up a simple plan, right? Whether it was a 2-week class, whether it was a 4-week class, whether it was a 6-week class, in order for us to then present it to the administration, in order for them to be able to see, right, transparency. Right? We wanted to be able to work with all of our cards on the table in order for them to see exactly what it is that we was trying to create. And so as we started to really approach, you know, many of the people who were reluctant, right, because the politics was something that was real strong, you know, they also began to realize that our approach was sincere. And so then as guys started to take classes, other guys started to sign up for some of the classes that we was offering orientation. And as guys was the classes, we was encouraging them, you know what I'm saying, if there's something that we're missing that you feel that you can contribute, this would be a perfect opportunity, man, for you to be able to, you know, to present it to the teach board, which I also started to build out of the diversity within the prison system, you know, and then that's how it slowly started. It grew organically, right? Because then guys begin to see is that the opportunities was real, right? No matter how much time you had, no matter what your sentence structure was, no matter what your education level was, we was providing education and opportunity for anybody who wanted it. And that was something that was unheard of. And it just grew from there.
That's so incredible. And it's just like, you know, my thing is emergent strategy. I'm saying like, that's emergent strategy case study. That's it right there. You're creating more possibilities, making a way out of no way, but honoring interdependence, honoring people's sovereignty, and really addressing the need, right? What is the need and how do we adapt to meet it? I'm so blown away by what you've done, and particularly that the multiracial component of it, because it feels like what you just offered of like, I can't assume across these different experiences what you need. I can ask you for your generosity with your own experience, with your own expertise about your own history, and through that weaving together of expertises, then we can become curious. And it actually creates a space to be curious. And I think there's also a being present with what is right now. So it's like wherever you're coming from, I can be present with where you are right now. If you're willing to show up, then I'm willing to be in a conversation with you. And I feel like that's something that everyone I know in movement needs to learn, you know, because right now we do the same segregation, right? We do the same segregation and judging each other across all these lines when we are actually one body that needs to learn from each other how to be. So I just want to say I really honor the organizing strategies you've been trying. And Tonya, I want to hear the same thing from you with the Women's Village. What were y'all up to with the Women's Village? And as you have left incarceration, you know, has that organizing modality stayed with you? Has it shown up in your life in new ways? I want to hear, you know, both what was happening then and what's happening now.
Thanks for asking. When we started, the Women's Village started outside, started from observation by someone who worked at the prison. And he was a mental health counselor for several of the founders. And that at that time, people who had long sentences were being denied access to education besides a GED. And we had gotten a little bit of, we had gotten into a college class from an Indian American woman, East Indian American woman, and she was very progressive. And as a result, the prison, the people that worked at the prison pushed her out. And so we were writing letters for weeks. I mean, writing 50 letters to the people in
60 seconds remaining.
In you know, in Olympia, the DOC higher ups, the college higher, anybody we could get to, and didn't get anywhere. And this was around the time Gilda had come in, but this therapist, he said, you know, I seem to see that there are people who come to prison and they either find something out and start to thrive, or their life is a continuation of the missteps and destructive patterns that they were before. What you guys seem to have this down some way, and what is it? And then how can you share it? Because if you can bottle it and share it, then it will be less like a prison and more like a village. We talked about the idea for years, and we came up with
you have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call.
And then networking. So there were some people who were passionate about family restoration. Some were passionate about education. Some were passionate about being healthy. Others were passionate about keeping people from following in the same steps that they did. So we kind of created different councils around our areas of interest. And then first we had to sell the administration on it, because they have security threat groups, more than 3 to 5 people in a group at a time, created a security risk, and carried all kinds of, you know, sanctions. And so we had to convince them that we were not going to take illegitimate power in the prison and use it against them. I mean, because as Gilda said, women were already using it against each other in terms of violence, and you know, the idea that sometimes people who are abused then become the abuser. And then we had to convince our fellow peers that this wasn't something that we were trying to be better than them. And you know, we would just say, we're trying to be better than we used to be, and we just invite you to be brave enough to do that for yourself. Because how does it feel to exist in the same way that you came in here? For me, it was unbearable to stay in that suffering of, like Kimonti said, of lying to myself, of denying the pain. And you know, that saying, there's a saying that one of my lifer friends used to say, and she'd say, when the pain of staying the same overcomes the fear of change, then that's when you'll change.
Yes, that's right.
So it was just too painful to stay that same Tonya that I came in there as. And I had to be authentic with myself, whether how I walked in the world or how people saw me. I knew I had to be authentic with myself. And you know, I found a group of like-minded women that had come to that same conclusion, but from different pathways. And so we worked on that, and it was successful. It's the people and the passion that remains at WCCW does not create an environment where the women's village is as healthy or sustainable as it was. But we always intended to bring it to the greater community.
Great.
So we have done that. We started with maybe 5 people. There's probably about 25 of us now. Wow. 15 of us are going to go on retreat at the beginning of May, and get a strategic plan together. One of the organization that I work for, and the education organization that started in Purdy, they are sponsoring us. So you know, we're trying to do things step by step. One of the things that we helped to get started was that now women can get associate's and bachelor's degrees while they're there.
Wow.
And it's a really rigorous academic environment if you really want to try. I think that, you know, education is a doorway, but it's only a tool. of the mind. Like the mind is the thing that matters, and there are many ways to nourish it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and so we're just trying to do that in whatever way that we can, and to support women, because the transition is difficult. The
That's
landing is very few people stick it, you know.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your work, Kimonti. Thank you for your work. I see the innovation of it. And again, there's something in there around like we need to attend to caring for each other. And then we need to open up the door of like everyone in their own mind has the capacity to reach their own greatness. So how to remove the obstacles to that? How to remove the obstacles to that? And I'm grateful that you were able to figure that out. And I love that you're bringing it into community, but it also sounds like doing it in a pace and at a level that actually allows the relationships to be at the center, right? Which I think is so crucial. It's like that's how we always survive wherever we are.
Yeah.
And as I listen to both of you, I mean, it's been so interesting to be in this pandemic realm where what I hear from everyone is, I feel so trapped. I feel so caught. I feel so contained. I can't do anything. And I'm like, look at Kimonti, look at Tonya, like that you cannot be so contained that you cannot be transforming your conditions and changing everything. There's no such thing, right? And we all, are trapped in different conditions as long as we believe ourselves to be trapped. And I just want to continuously shine a light on the liberating work that both of you are doing. And Gilda, I want to bring it to you. I'm aware of time. I know we're right at 4:00. I also feel like there's just a couple of things I want you to speak to. One is, what do you hope happens because you made this piece, right? What do you hope changes in the world because you made this film? And what conditions feel like they might be shifting, that actually are like, oh, this is shifting, this is changing. I could feel this change coming. Right?
Well, with the film, we have a really comprehensive impact campaign.
Yeah.
It's not like I finish the film and we go away from that. There's no parole in Washington State. In fact, in 16 states, there's no parole. I mean, there's a kind of parole, if you're a youth and those kinds of things. We want to create a culture that we not just bring back parole, because it was racist anyway, but we bring back parole with a racial equity lens that's composed of a community board, right? We want to change juvenile sentencing laws. So now I'm starting to speak at legislative meetings with other organizers from Tonya's, the organization that she works at, the Freedom Project, learning from those folks who've been down what is necessary. And so we are pushing legislation. We are also trying to reduce recidivism, looking at reentry programs and who is doing these reentry programs. Like Tonya is part of the Freedom Project doing that. What organizations are doing that? Scaling down and the punitive impact of in our school system, K-12. If you look at who gets expelled, who gets suspended,
right,
it's mostly Black, brown, and poor people and immigrant populations. So we're talking about social, emotional learning integrated in it. We're using the TEACH model. Let's be clear. TEACH is not just a prison education model.
No.
It's a model they deal with. I was walked in once, they were talking about Immanuel Kant, and this was a writing class that Kimonti was doing. They're talking about healthy thinking, and they have a formula on the board about what we call soft skills, healthy thinking, parenting, math, memoir writing, and those kinds of things. How do we incorporate social, emotional, and cultural responsive education into the 3 R's, reading, writing, and we're looking at a model, a pedagogical model. I remember both Tonya and Kimonti saying that slow student, the so-called slow student, is who we follow, and that each one teach one. So we're looking at things like that, changing mandatory minimum sentencing, which says that if you did this, there's a formula, and therefore there's nothing we can say. Throw away the key, lock you up, those kinds of things. So you see, restorative justice is very important. Hurt people, and I know it's bigger than that, because you need to, you need to deal with the healing, But let me tell you what lasts a long time. And I think you say it in your book about the importance of transformative justice. Because, yeah, you say there's something about, are we going to restore people back to these
where they were, to the conditions that were inequality based anyway, and racist and everything else.
That's right. We need to transform that. What does it mean to be a prison abolitionist and look at Chauvin, right?
Yes.
Yes, he needs to be found guilty. But if we keep pucking the Chauvins, that's all we're doing. We need to develop a way to even change his mind. If Kimonti Carter in prison can bring over somebody with swastikas, to say, I realize we have the same enemy, that's a pedagogical, that's a mental, that's a spiritual change.
Yes.
Right? And I asked Kimonti, I said, Kimonti, is he still going to the white nationalist club in the prison? He said, yeah. I said, he is? He said, yeah, now he's got a responsibility, Gilda.
Yes.
I'm thinking, I'm going to cancel the culture, right?
No, this was it. This is where I was like, that's so Fred Hampton of you. That's so Fred Hampton of you, right? It's like really being able to understand, like once people get liberated into the idea that they have a common enemy, once people understand the class dynamics of racial constructs, all those things, then you can't go back from that understanding, and you have to go into a transformative realm. And that's what I heard even in the film. I think you do such a beautiful job of catching that, of people being like, even though I feel pride about who I am and where I come from, that doesn't mean I have to take that away from anyone else, which is like that's the fundamental piece, right?
And that's the reason why we have crump dancing in that. Because when they talk about it, they talk about their mind, body, and soul, how it stays in their mind. And I saw these crump dancers, and I said, let's put some crump dancing. So they're dancing on the steps of the Capitol.
Yes.
And with praise dances. That's and reason why they have masks, because that's what the child soldiers in Liberian Civil War, these children did. So it's a metaphor of, I learned so much. And this is not a prison film.
No, it's not.
Prison is a character.
Prison's a character, but it feels like a film about transformation and about children and about society and structures and freedom.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really appreciate y'all. Kimonti, I appreciate you finding your way to be here with us. Tonya, I really appreciate you making the space and the time. I heard you say you're taking care of your grandpa. There was a question that came up. So I don't know if everyone knows what's happening in the comments, but there was guidance given for how you can actually put money on Kimonti's books so that you can support him and the work that he's doing. We also sent a bunch of books for the Black Prisoners Caucus, and there was a way to do that. So that might be another thing. If you have books and resources that you'd like to send to the Black Prisoners Caucus or to the Women's Village or to the Freedom Project, like we want to figure out how we make tangible offers of support. Tonya, there was also a question, are there things people can do to support you in the work that you're doing right now? Letting people know about that.
If y'all would be kind, I'm gonna put my email address in the chat, and
great.
And if somebody wants to get in touch with me, we can go from there. It's the first time I've been asked a question. So you can support Freedom Project. You can get in touch with me, and you can support somebody that's a young person in your neighborhood and give them the space. And you know what people can do for me, honestly, especially people of color. Do not keep protesting only.
Yes.
Run for local public government. Please change policy. Like, this is the only way things are going to change. If we don't like them people, please be one of them. Please.
That's right.
I mean, the way things are going in this country are frightening. And I can promise you, it'll only get worse for people whose tan do not wear off.
That's right. That's right. Now, Gilda, I know there's a screening tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is that open? Like, I posted it, but maybe if you can drop the information from that into the chat too, so people can see, like, if you want to see this film. And then if people follow the page for Since I've Been Down on Facebook or on Instagram, that's where you can see ongoing opportunities to see the film. Right now it's going to festivals. The dream is that it gets picked up by what, like HBO or someone big that just is like, now
All
everybody
of
has to
them.
see this, right? And it can win the award so that the story can get told. So
Right.
I want to invite everyone who's here today, who made it through all the different, hooplas, everyone who's here today I want you to also feel the personal responsibility for making sure that these stories get told and that this film gets out there and that these stories get supported. And also to figure out these systems are all around us. These systems are all around us, and Black people are organizing in prisons all around us. So here in Michigan, my good friend Sawatu was in prison for 2 years, during which she gave birth, and she was organizing in the prison to get the Black mothers resources for their children. This is happening all around you. And so be tuning in, because there's a whole population behind bars who are brilliant, who are organizing, and who need our solidarity with them. I am so grateful y'all made the time and stuck it out, and I promise to get better at technology so that next time we could just get into the conversation right away. And let's keep doing these. Let's do more events. When the film sells and it's big and it's going out there, we'll do some more events and bring it back. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much for sending all those books to the Black Prisons Caucus. People are getting them. It feels so good. I mean, that's transformative justice as well, So
Yay.
Thank you so much for this. Anyway.
And I also thank you for I've never done a Facebook Live, so I'm glad we just left there and came here. And and I'm honored to have been in this conversation with you. And yeah, let's do it again. I think that only through conversation and collaboration that we are gonna get through this.
That's right. Kimonti, any last things you want to say to the folks?
Kimonti.
Those phones.
Kimonti.
Come on back. Come on.
Can you hear us?
Uh-oh.
Lost the call?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
He said he did say thank you, and he wishes that he could be there for tomorrow.
Good.
And
Kimonti has not seen the film.
Oh.
Imagine that. Pandemic happened and the prison shut down.
Oh no, we got to make that happen.
Yeah, we got to make that happen.
We got to make that happen.
And there's a new bill, a new ruling from the Washington Supreme Court that he might be up for the possibility of getting his sentence reduced. And one of his attorneys, I think, is on here, which is great, So
yeah, I was like, I wonder if you'll talk about that, or can we talk about that? But basically, just to let folks know, like the age, there's something around the age, so that if someone is as young as he was, a child like he was, that actually this kind of sentencing is beyond. It's unfair for anyone, but it's beyond unfair for a child to receive this. And so, if that age gets raised, then that could help us to go back. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We so appreciate you. We really appreciate you, Adrienne Maree Brown. Really.
Hey, I'm just grateful to be able to, I'm always trying to figure out, like, how do I use this random platform? Because I'm like, I don't really want this, but this is a good way to use this, right?
Yeah.
And my commitment to y'all is to make sure it ends up on YouTube. It ends up in a lot of places where people can see it, and just keep lifting the story up. All right.
All right. Okay. So have a good day.
Thank you. Bye, loves.
Bye.